Guillermo, welcome to the show.
Adrian, it's always good to see you.
Yeah,
Welcome. Happy to have a conversation.
so we've been talking kind of like behind the scenes before recording right here about various things, various challenges and opportunities in multifamily. You're in the space, you're trying to solve a lot of problems with the technology that you're building, but you're also like very passionate about the industry and you want to solve problems, generally speaking. Let's start with a little bit like outlining the conversation with a piece of with a newsletter that you sent me, and let's just start over there. So I'm gonna let you.
Yeah,
I'm gonna let you like do a quick intro of what was in the newsletter and our previous conversation.
wonderful. So we chatted about Andreessen Horowitz, big VC firm. Mark Andreessen's founder of Netscape, PayPal Mafia, that kind of thing. So someone worth listening to, and they talk about a number. And rarely does he talk about field services. Like he's talking about crypto to the moon, all sorts of stuff like that. And newsletter he shared last week ago, a couple weeks back, was around like, why is your HVAC bill so high? And it was a really interesting dig into the cost of HVAC, electricians, plumbers over the last 5 years, and the source of all that. And the punchline in the article was that things that have AI in them and in the construction and the manufacturing and the distribution of them all have become so cheap. The things that do not have AI in them have become so expensive. The example that they use is that if you've got a hole in your wall, it's cheaper to go buy a panel TV and put it over top of that wall than it is to actually go find a drywaller to fix that wall. And that's how advanced it's gotten in manufacturing with respect to building those products, and how far behind we are in the trades and the field services side. And then the punchline, they go even further on that, is talking about where have all these trades gone. Now we know there's a supply side problem, but I wasn't aware the extent of the demand side problem that's being suffered by multifamily, that you're competing with Facebook, Microsoft, Amazon, Google for these plumbers, electricians, and trades folks, to the point that like when you consider that there is, in just the US alone, there's $40 billion a month being spent on data center construction. That doesn't include operations, and that doesn't include, guess what else they do? Maintenance orders, turns, and inspections. And so they are sucking all those resources out of the market that's already scarce and paying them well above scale. So not only do we have a supply side problem in multifamily, I think we have a quality problem that's all related to the fact that we're being outpaced by bigger, more aggressive monsters than what we're willing to hire for, we're able to hire for.
I think this is a great assessment, and I don't disagree at all. I 100% agree about the challenge. I'm also an individual that wants to focus on how do we overcome the challenges, how do we find solutions for it. So I want to give you the opportunity to just come up with a couple of ways in which we could approach the situation. Obviously, incredibly hard to compete with companies that spend $500 billion a year in building like new facilities that, like you said, they're gonna have to be maintained. They gotta have to be cleaned. AC's gotta be, keep running, especially in a data center. Like
Yeah.
you that's a controlled environment. Like you can't just have AC's not working. That's not an option. If you have AC's not working, that's a true disaster right there. Like the data center doesn't work. So in a light of that, how do you see some solutions that we could bring into the industry, into multifamily, to maybe change course
I
what
think
we're
that,
seeing right now?
like when we take a look at technology, I'll dial it back to kind of technology that's not too scary, right? Screwdriver and power drill, right? One revs at, 300 revs a minute, and one revs at 14, 10, I don't know how many revs a minute a screwdriver works at. But consider the multiplying effect of those that use screwdrivers and those that use power drills. It's not too far of a stretch to match using AI to do your work and using a screwdriver versus a power drill. And so why I kind of use that expression is that imagine if you're in the productivity and output that comes from a field of 10 techs using screwdrivers and 10 techs using power drills. Now, the team that's using power drills, they're going to be more productive. They're going to have a greater output than those using screwdrivers. And what does that mean? You can pay them more. And if you can pay them more, now you can compete. But if we're going to go back and go into a market that is using AI and power drills, and we're going to try and battle with a screwdriver workforce, we're going to lose. And we have nobody else to blame but ourselves and the choices that we're making, because the technology is going to drive the productivity. The technology will be enable a higher output per FTE, and the technology will allow us to save some resources, but those that stay be higher quality and pay them more. And that might be an uncomfortable way of evaluating how to consider new technology, but there's a true fact that if people are more productive, they're going to make more money. And that might be the answer that we're seeking to resolve for when you're considering technology. Like if you can't get your team to buy in on tech, well, because you're forcing change on them, maybe the answer is, hey, if you're going to use this power drill screwdriver team, you're going to become so much more productive that we're going to be able to do more. You're going to be able to deliver that 1 to 250, 1 to 300 ratio. That starts to push available resources to be able to fund higher wages, higher salary, greater retention, career paths, all these things that are unlocked, very similar to using the panel to cover off the drywall hole. Now we're using technology to enable a longer career path within our industry. Because I tell you what you know, is that those industries, private equity in trades, data centers, they're using AI in their maintenance operations. So they're going to be able to accelerate the pay scale that they're driving, in addition to the much, much, much bigger balance sheet, to be able to strip multifamily of all the available talent that they have in the talent pool. It's kind of dire. Like, it's way worse than the crisis we talked about in terms of just availability.
Considering that multifamily has been historically looked at as an industry that's not the first to adopt new technology, embrace it, not drive the society as a whole in like adopting innovation, and is more like following what's happening in society. How is this gonna play into the future and in the context of what you just described?
I actually don't fault multifamily for deprioritizing technology. If I were looking at the core business metrics, it was running just fine. And there was no reason to change. And as a human being, and you're a fellow human being, I don't like change much either. But if I'm forced to change, I'm going to adopt it and adapt accordingly. And so when I look at multifamily right now, I don't know if there's a choice any longer. Like we're very close to being the last dog at the bowl when it comes down to being able to find the talent to run these buildings. And if you're aligned with like Don Beveridge was talking about at Summit MX, which is like the business of property management is maintenance. Everything else is just supports the maintenance function. And so if it's curating assets and maintaining those assets is the business and the revenue streams that come in from that, is there another option? I would be open to a conversation about the other options that are available that supersede jumping into technology, because otherwise we're gonna have nobody left that wants to work for us. And the challenge is that the part that's gonna feel sick in the stomach is you're gonna know that there's going to be trade organizations. Harvard just launched a trade organization program, right? With funding from, I think Bezos, somebody rich. And like, there are going to be more trade people that come online, but they're not gonna choose to work in this industry because the wage scale, the NOI compression isn't going to enable that kind of pay scale. But Amazon is, Microsoft is, their core business is those data centers. And private equity is, their core business is going to be servicing those data centers. And so it's going to be, I don't know if there's a choice. I mean, I'm open to hear comments on the podcast in terms of like what other choices are really out there to compete with productivity.
I believe that the choices are gonna come not from within the industry; they're gonna come from outside, in a form of disruption. We've seen what happened with COVID. That was in the last 2 decades that I've been around in the industry, has been the period that the technology adoption was the fastest, probably faster than any other period in a history of property management. So I'm thinking what you just describing makes multifamily the perfect candidate for disruption. Let's not forget the multifamily; it's a multi-trillion-dollar industry, right? And a lot of eyes are gonna be like focusing on this as an opportunity to disrupt, run it better, and then put out more profits. What do you think about the industry being disrupted by this new technology wave, AI included?
Like again, like I think that like the previous tenure or duration where technology wasn't a priority, I don't necessarily fault those decision makers for where we are today, because they managed the business that was the priority at the time, and there simply wasn't the compression of NOI. we didn't feel the compression on rents, the concessions that we're feeling right now. And then the bottom part of it up, the increase of property taxes, interest, and insurance, there's just nothing to operate in the middle anymore, where there used to be enough slough in the middle to run a decent business. That's not available any longer. And so like when you have no more, like literally, and again, in budget season right now, I bet many regional managers feel backed into a corner, or they don't feel great about the budgets that they just signed off on, because they've kind of like signed off on something they know not to be true. And the conviction around the plan makes you feel unconvicted around the ability to execute. But now my bonus is vulnerable, my growth plan is vulnerable, and it's just going to crumble all from the bottom. And so the ripe for disruption is there. And what I find really interesting, or at least the playbook for technology adoption in multifamily, is steal from other asset industries. There's no need to reinvent anything in this business. In my previous career, I worked I did some work in maintenance and facilities for a toilet paper manufacturer, literally a shit business. And they ran a 3% margin every single year, and every single thing was tracked and measured and modified. And so when we took a look at the pulp that comes out of the forest, the manufacturing facility to produce the toilet paper, and the distribution of that toilet paper, the turns, the inspections, the maintenance orders, everything was done on like a Swiss watch, because every single penny counted. And so that is a asset and a facility that runs optimally, and it's in a remote location. And they were faced with those kind of fiscal constraints in the mid 2000s. And so they optimized the technology back then. So these are things that we just didn't feel those constraints that we're feeling today. And I think it's probably a little uncomfortable, because we feel as though we should have been paying attention to this change in other industries. But I don't offer any fault in that point, because I don't think it actually was enough motivation to make that change happen, because there wasn't enough chips on the table to go for it. But I think what happened is that because there wasn't a progression to making that advancement throughout those years of technology advancement, we're really stuck in a point where we got to do something different. So my playbook, if I was adopting technology and I was a facilities leader or an asset manager, I would go to conferences that are non-real estate related, see what's happening in those field services conferences, rip, steal, copy, plagiarize all the different ways of doing things, bring it over, and go right at it right away. There's so much opportunity to optimize that's available from other industries to borrow and modify. And let's say it's an 80% solution, but it's still better than the 0% solution that you got today.
I think this is great advice. I also see another option to go about it.
Yeah.
We don't do much about it. We don't do what you just described. And here's McDonald's knocking on a multifamily's door and says, we have run a real estate business for years, very successful, a multi-billion-dollar business. What a lot of folks out there might not realize is that McDonald's is not just a burger and fries and
Right.
Coke business, but it's also like a huge real estate play. They own the real estate for the properties that they manage, for the stores that they manage. They figure out how to run a great, incredible business with low wage and employees that don't have any qualifications. So training and doing that at scale with low wage employees, and that sounds a lot like the model we're running in multifamily. Imagine that they decide tomorrow that we're gonna deploy $5 billion in investing in real estate and actually running, like starting a property management company. How is that gonna play for the current operators?
Well, I mean, you bring up a great example, right? In all of my years in doing facilities work, there was kind of like two choices you could have. You can run call it variable process with all-star people, or you can run an all-star process with variable people. And that's like the McDonald's example you made, right? You cannot run a variable process with variable people. That's a
How
recipe for
about an
disaster.
all-star process with all-star people?
But that's often far too expensive. That might not exceed. I mean, it'd be amazing if you could, right? And I think that's the opportunity. But all stars don't work in variable processes. All stars only want to work in all-star processes because that's where they can maximize their return, right?
They also need the BLC players.
Yeah,
When you put together a team of all-stars, like they need to have
support.
part of the same team, like support
Yeah.
for the things that they don't want to do.
Someone's going to come off the bench,
Yeah.
right? And so, like when you take a look at what you described, If you look at the playbook of running a McDonald's restaurant and compare that to the playbook that's being run a multifamily, an $80 million asset, they're not even the same. Like they're not even like the degree of like in a McDonald's hamburger, it's 2 pickles only, not 3, not 1. Like what kind of detail is available for that in a multifamily property operation SOP? If you can find the SOPs. Like we're in the checklist business, trying to find checklists that are consistent across operators, across buildings, across the same building, is like that's a 20% success rate. And so it's the point of discomfort that we're being thrust into is that we've been able to be fat, dumb, and happy for a long period of time, and that choice is no longer available to us. This is a great industry. This has a huge curve with respect to revenue and demand side. Housing as a gap is not going away, and not to mention we've got millions and millions and millions of people that are looking to move into the home seekers. They're going to go live in a house or live in a unit, and that is not going anywhere. The bankers are betting on it. Everybody is betting that housing is going to be solved by multifamily property managers, et cetera. And so the conviction around the market is there. The conviction around the trades is there. And it's almost like they're letting property managers, here are the cards that you've been dealt, figure it out. And to your comment around like, where is this going to go? I think that there's ample opportunity for an organization that knows how to run operations with variable people and be able to slap that down. Like I work with a colleague who went through the Hilton training program and then the Ritz-Carlton training program, and talk about a centralized operational playbook for how you can execute in a asset that has a lot of turnover, that has a concierge type of experience and a service type experience, and driving variable processes with a lot of pricing changes. And the playbook, like you can't even go on site with Ritz-Carlton till like 7 weeks or 8 weeks of training, and even then you're just shadowing. Like that, and not to mention the 4 or 5 interviews it takes to actually get into that job. So like it is a significant investment in process that allows you to do what you're talking about. And I do believe, and maybe this is what you're getting at, is that if property managers don't choose that path, someone is going to choose it for them and take them out. And when you think about the cash flow of some of these companies, like McDonald's is an example, like the free cash flow that McDonald's will spin off in a quarter could buy the entire organized NMHC, And so it's like, it's right there.
I don't see a complete mindset shift for the current players in the industry. I see someone else bringing a different mindset and reinventing property management as we know it, disrupting. Like I said, another example that I can think of is Amazon and their logistics. If they decide to deploy serious resources to take over a piece of business in the MRO space in multifamily, current competitors don't have much of a standing chance.
Without a doubt. I mean, you take a look at the MRO side of things. I mean, I don't know of a better logistics company in the world than Amazon right now. I mean, I'm certain that there is, but like, I can't think of it. And when you think about last mile delivery and what Amazon is expert at, it's twice a day if you're in a major center, right? And so like, why do you need a supply closet anymore? But in order to make that order, right, you've got to know what part you're trying to fix. And you got to be able to achieve consistency. So price books, material books, all those things are all things that are going to have to emerge to achieve that consistency. But like we've talked about so far, the desire to make that change has to exist so that we can get more revenue and remain relevant. Because I like your point. If we don't make it happen, it's going to happen to us.
It's going to happen to us. Yeah, I'm loving it. That's the passive way.
Right.
That you wait, you don't do anything about it, something is going to happen to you.
There's too much money involved. There's way too much money involved.
It's a multi-trillion-dollar industry. How this could not be appealing from someone that currently makes a play like somewhere else?
Particularly when the money that's chasing multifamily right now, it is choosing multifamily because the other investment options are not as compelling as multifamily. So you've got a compelling, rich, I'll say a compelled investor that's looking to place money, You've got an asset class that's going to have a up and to the right curve for demand with respect to rents and people. So that's going up to the right. So people who would not have been interested in this class before, that are vicious with the way they operate, are now very interested in how this asset class is going to work. And they see pay zones that well exceed what their conventional investment alternatives are. Because you go invest inside a business that the net book value of that company and the market value of that company is like a few points above. Whereas in property management, it's like you've got your net book value of the asset and you've got a big spread for what it's trading for. They're going to compete that down and they're going to start grabbing those values. It's going to be really, really, it's inevitable. And to your point, it's going to happen fast.
Looking forward by 2026 and beyond, tell me about some things that get you very excited, optimistic about technology in a multifamily space.
The thing I'm the most excited about, where we share a passion, is we are going to be able to create a better life and better pay for the people in the field. And that's going to create a better resident experience, which is going to increase retention on rents. We've been doing it backwards all along and trying to find the leasing side of things to drive, the best fit tenant for retention. So I'm thrilled at the exciting opportunity to make it better for the first responders, people in the field, and that's going to drive more retention in that space, and that's going to drive resident retention, and that's going to keep revenue up for those buildings that choose that path. And I think that's the best part about it, because if we can eliminate or at least reduce the impact of things like on-call, if we can reduce the impact of the need to kind of go to every site, if we can have sites that have like well-executed preventative maintenance walks and that equipment is budgeted for and it's fixed when it needs to be fixed, then we're going to make a better life for absolutely everybody. But we got to flip that switch, because right now we're so stuck in our heels in a reactive mode that it feels impossible to be preventative. But I tell you, there are industries around the world that have made this same change from reactive to proactive. They've made everyone's life better. They've grown revenue and they've reduced the variability in their revenue. And it's a conviction at leadership level. So I'm excited for that.
Excited to have you today.
All
Thank
right,
you for
buddy.
the conversation as always.
Thanks for the ability to chat with that.